Half hour of the programme, Vampire Weekend. Welcome back to the show. I'm not in any way saying that your new album sounds like that song, but there is a little texture and mood, I think, in that record which shares some ground with the new album, which is out in May. Which leads me to, I don't know where you start with a new record. Do you sit down as members of the band all together when you regroup and talk about where you want to go? Does anyone ever say, do you know what, I think we should head here? Or do you start making music and the record essentially reveals itself to you?
I think there's always a few big ideas, but then once you actually start working on it, you have to adjust. And also with this record, there's a long break.
Yeah.
We've been touring so much for 3 albums that there's a nice pause to not think about music at all.
Right. And do you hang out together when you're not in a tour bus? Do you see each other much, or you can go 2 years without?
We see each other here and there. I mean, there was a period where actually Bayo lived in London, CT was in New York, and I was in LA. But
right,
still see each other.
Having fled to different corners of the world, you still keep in touch.
Yeah, of course.
I wonder. The only reason I ask this question is I just wonder with bands, particularly bands who've been together for a while, whether you ever notice members of the band changing, because everyone changes. But when you eventually walk back into a studio, do you suddenly think, oh, we've changed?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. We've all known each other since we were in college, so I guess. I don't know. I feel like in some ways everybody stays the same. I guess it's like with anybody that you've known since you were 18 years old.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, one of the reasons I ask all this is because, as you mentioned, there was quite a gap this time. So we should tell people where you were. Because what did you go and do? I imagine you had to tour the last record for a year or two.
I mean,
then you took a proper break.
Yeah. The first 3 records to me felt like a kind of a mega cycle of nonstop, touring, and then you're back in the studio and stuff. So, it ended up being 6 years between the albums, which really sounds like a lot. But then when I run it back in my head and you do the math, if you're, put out a record, tour easily 1 to 2 years, that's normal.
Yeah.
Then if you say you want to take a break finally, go back to being like a normal person or not thinking about music as a profession, but as a fan or an amateur. Mm-hmm. Say you do that for 1 or 2 years, now you're at 4 years. And then you say you need 2 years to make an album. Suddenly you're at 6.
Yeah.
And then when you think about it that way, you're like, 6 is pretty short, I think. But obviously that's not standard.
There's plenty of people in the music industry who are probably giving you the nudge. No, it's 6 years. That's not short. You did loads of things though, didn't you, in that time? I mean, it's not like you sat at home idle watching the TV every day, because you did a whole bunch of stuff.
I did that a bit too.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean, more laptop in bed, but I did a lot of that.
Sorry, listen to the old man. I mean, you sat in front of the television.
I throw on the TV for a special occasion, or play video games through it. No, I think there was a lot of to be honest, there was a lot of sitting around, because that's kind of what you want to do after touring so much. But yeah, me personally, I did some stuff. I've joined you in the ranks of radio a little bit.
You see, I was going to list everything. So there was the Netflix series, which was really interesting, because that's a different side of your creativity, isn't it?
It's fun to do something kind of weird and narrative and away from music.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's completely, as a blank canvas, you can create anything, can't you?
That's what's fun about animation, yeah.
Yeah. So there was that, and you did some work with other musicians.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And then you started doing a radio show. Another musician taking our jobs. I mean, I'm all for putting the wall up. You're one side or the other.
Right. Well, we barely play music, so I mean, it's probably a little closer to a podcast at the end of the day, just in terms of the way it's run. But we talk about music a little bit, but there's also a lot of talk about snack foods and Doritos and corporate food history and things like that. What
was it like being on the other side of a microphone and being able to ponder, the mysteries of life and everything, without having to, concern yourself with the discipline of putting all your thoughts into a pop song?
Well, I found that I really like it because maybe this is your experience too, but, it's one of the few moments where you truly just have to be in the moment, because you're talking. You can't be dwelling on the past. You can't be anxious about the future. So there's a bit of like a Zen thing, because you're just there. And I know that live music is supposed to be that. And certainly we've all had transcendent moments playing as Vampire Weekend. But, like we used to play the same set list every night. So there were moments where I'd be in the moment, and then next thing you know, I'm like, I wasn't there. I was back to thinking about the past or the future. So
Yeah.
I found that talking on the mic and doing a radio show every 2 weeks was almost the closest I was getting to that old feeling of just being there.
Yeah,
you know?
an absolute hit of immediacy. That
Yeah.
there it is, and then it's done. Time Crisis, by the way, if you'd like to look it up, there's loads of episodes online which you can find. We should hear something from the new album. I'd like to talk more about the album Father of the Bride, but let's hear something from it. What are you going to start with?
Sure, we're going to start with a slightly stripped down version of a Harmony Hall.
There you go. It's Vampire Weekend live on Six Music.
Took a vow in summertime. Now we find ourselves in late December. I believe that New Year's Eve would be the perfect time for their great surrender, but they don't remember. Anger wants a voice, voices won't sing. Singers harmonize till they can't hear anything. Thought that I was free from all that questioning, but every time a problem ends, another one begins, and the stone walls of harmony all bear witness. Anybody with a good in mind can never forgive the sight of wicked snakes inside a place you thought was dignified. I don't wanna live like this, but I don't wanna die. I don't wanna live like this, but I don't wanna die. Within the halls of power lies a nervous heart that beats like a young pretender's. Beneath these velvet gloves are the shameful crooked hands of a money lender. 'Cause I still remember anger wants a voice, voices won't sing. Singers harmonize till they can't hear anything. Thought that I was free from all that questioning, but every time a problem ends, another one begins, and the stone walls of harmony all bear witness. Anybody with a word in mind can never forgive the sight of wicked snakes inside a place you thought was dignified. I don't wanna live like this, but I don't wanna die.
for the first time on radio. Vampire Weekend here in the UK on Six Music, and a song Harmony Hall, which features that terrific line: singers harmonise until they can't hear anything. There are some very good lines on this record, and I don't want to give too much away, give the game away, but I've heard pretty much nearly all the records now, and there's some grand line. I don't know who you aspire to as a lyricist, or if you ever did, if there was someone in your youth that you thought, yeah, that's quite clever. That was there anyone who you thought, yeah, that's good?
Well, you know what? There's a few. I mean, there's so many. You know,
Right.
I love songwriting and I love lyrics. But I was thinking about this being over in the UK. I feel like when Vampire Weekend came out, there's a lot of discussion about some of our influences. You know, whether Paul Simon, things like that. And I always
Yeah.
felt like a little short shrift was given to some of my early faves, which were Elvis Costello, XTC, and Squeeze. And being here in the UK, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about them, and those are all bands that my dad liked and would play. And those are some of the first groups where I was like, that's witty. I
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
That I was
yeah.
like, I love the tone of those writers. You know?
Do you know, I was going to say Costello, and weirdly, because we played Elvis Costello yesterday, because I was sat in a bar on 6th Street, I've just told this story, on the Sunday after South by Southwest has finished and everyone's sort of dispersing, and I sat in this bar and they played a lot of British music, but here I hadn't listened to Radio by Elvis Costello in an
great
age,
song.
and it's so packed, lyrically packed, isn't it? He doesn't leave any room. There's a punchline all the time, although
Yeah.
there's a thought process in it that you can hear, which is, you know, something coming back to. There's a lot of, you've managed to convey a lot, sometimes in very short songs on this album, I think.
I try to. I mean, the short songs are definitely a Vampire Weekend specialty. So we gotta pack a lot into a couple minutes sometimes.
There's a line in one of the tracks which I think goes, "We got married in the gold rush, and the rush has never felt the same," which I think is another very special line.
Thanks.
When do you know the time is right to regroup, and when did you regroup this time around, and how did it all pan out?
Well, we were kind of lucky because we got to regroup slowly. I mean, it seemed like a bit of a mistake last year because we were obligated to play a few festivals, including End of the Road here.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's planning an album campaign is very difficult, and I have a lot of sympathy for the people we work with because they're got to be, you know, planning tours that may or may not happen based on when the record's done. So we ended up obligated to do a few festivals, and it was actually perfect because we got, you know, obviously me, Chris, and then all our new musicians. Greta, Brian, Will, and Garrett are with us today. And so it's kind of cool. We started to explore the back catalog as a 7-piece, and we got to like gently rip the Band-Aid off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to do a couple small shows in this crunchy town in California called Ojai, and then we got to go play in Australia and Japan, and then Lollapalooza in Chicago, and then come here. So all of that was kind of like a nice way to kind of, you know, slowly get back into the bath. And then now we have all the new songs to play and things like that. But it's been a nice, slow process of regrouping.
So, and what sort of mood were you in? I don't know how long it actually took to make the record. Did you make it in one batch of sessions, or did you go back in?
I'd say realistically 3 years. Like
Right,
a
really?
year of kind of starting to write, and then 2 years of really being in the studio all the time.
And so, how do you tie a record together which has music which has been written over such a long period of time? Because I imagine you're in different places, either musically or in your head.
Sure.
You know, sometimes when you walk in or you've been writing, you'll be up, and sometimes you'll be quite down.
Right, and I think especially on this album, on a double album, it's by design. There needs to be room for different moods and different feelings, and it's trickier in a way to have 18 songs tied together, but still different enough that each one belongs there. It's trickier than on a 10-song album. I mean, sometimes it's just luck. You know, just things. If things are written within a few years of each other, I'll sometimes look back and be like, wow, I really was obsessed with a certain image. I didn't even think about it at the time. And then in terms of tying it together sonically, and on this album, there's a lot of people, a lot of collaborators. A lot of that credit goes to Ariel Rekscheid, who produced quite a bit of the album, and he would often be in charge of sometimes taking disparate ideas and things that other people had started and kind of tying it together so that it felt like one thing, which is no small feat over 18 tracks.
Was it enjoyable bringing people in? I mean, I read an interview somewhere, or I think you're quoted as somewhere as at the start thinking, we should just get 200 people in, as pop music's all about collaboration
Right.
now.
No,
It wasn't quite 200 in the end.
It's definitely inspiring because that's the way a lot of modern music gets made. You know, somebody might come from, let's say Sweden. If the artist might come from Sweden to LA and they're there for 2 weeks, every day they're there, they're going to write a song with a different person. That's cool. That is inspiring. Personally, I'm a little too shy to meet that many people, and so I found it's like an interesting cast of characters on this album, but none of them actually came from too far afield. It was people who were already in the orbit, or people we got to know, and everybody who's on the album is usually on it for multiple tracks. So like, we put the song out, Sunflower, featuring Steve Lacy. It's the first Vampire Weekend song with the features. Some people might know Steve from the band he's in, the Internet, but his solo stuff's also great. And, he's on that song, but he's also on another song. He performs different things. He sings lead, he sings harmonies, he produces, so it's nice having that kind of collaboration.
When you look back, when you've made particularly a large body of work like this, does it take a while before it sort of makes sense, where you find things in it that even you didn't know were there, particularly lyrically?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I found that, I just did a few interviews today, starting to do press for the album. And of course, people they just heard the new album, so they ask questions about it. And I realized that I find it hard to want to interpret the songs or describe what a lyric is about now. But then I realized I'm actually very happy to talk about the last album because I have clarity about it. So it's almost like when you're doing press for a current album, that's actually the best time to look back and say, now I truly see what the third album was about.
So we should be doing the interview for the last album now, and we'd know exactly what was going on.
Let's book a 2025 session. We'll all come back. We'll mark it in our calendars.
There is, I don't know if you obviously, as you say, it's difficult to talk about it, but themes of the record, and it does go in different directions. But there's a lot of sort of thinking about pros and cons. You can almost feel you're in the argument in the song, going, well, I do love you, but is that enough? I do like this, but I'm not sure I want to stay.
Yeah.
It's like living in a turmoiled head occasionally. Even though it's a very joyous record, there are moments where I don't know what to do.
Well, I kind of feel like, that's at this point in my life, that's kind of how I see life a little bit. I think everybody inside their head, I mean, most people have, a lot of anxiety that we deal with. So there's all sorts of turning things over and pros and cons. And sometimes the only path forward is not that you can solve that question, that thing that's keeping you up at night. You don't always find an answer. Sometimes the path forward is actually not to answer the question, but just to laugh about it or go have fun or do something joyous, do something that, in the parlance of our time, sparks joy. Yeah. Those...
I mean, there's a track which I think is one of the tracks out there already, Big Blue, which simply sounds like it really needs a hug. You're going to
the song needs a hug.
The song and the person need a hug. I think you're going to play a couple more songs for us, though.
Yeah.
You can run these two together. What are you going to do next?
We're going to play Sunflower and 2021.
Fantastic. Here you go. Vampire Weekend on Six Music.
2021, when you think about me, I could wait a year, but I shouldn't wait 3. I don't wanna be 2021, when you think about us, copper goes green, steel beams go rust. It's a matter of it's a matter of
like on an afternoon stroll, catching a fleeting thought and taking that thought and just analysing it for a second. That's what it sounds like to me. That 2021.
Yeah, it's one of those short ones.
Yeah.
And I think on a long album, you need some essays and you need some fleeting thoughts too. And
yeah,
that's definitely in that category.
I've got one more question. That was 2021, by the way. Just one very quick question. Mm-hmm. Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Oh man, I mean, they're part of the same thing. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld was just in our video, so I think it would be a little bit disrespectful to say Seinfeld over Curb. But then, of course, Curb is a living thing.
Yeah.
They're filming a new season now, I've heard.
Are
so
they? Right.
right. You know, you can't choose.
Okay, that's fine.
There's the Old and the New Testament.
It's,
you know?
It's a good answer. Vampire Weekend, thank you very much for coming. The album arrives in May. It is a double album. It's big. It's got lots of things on it. It's got some jazzy moments, almost some Scott Walker. It's got some very thoughtful, considerate parts to it. And it is, what I'll tell you, it actually is through the production and through the way it's been constructed and put together and tied together. It is a thoroughly modern pop record is what it is. It's called Father of the Bride. It's out in May. Thank you very much, Vampire Weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.